Good afternoon. I'm ready when you are. Let me start with an announcement to bring you up to date on some of the facts about the latest deployment. As you know, yesterday Secretary Cohen signed an order to deploy an additional 176 fighter and tanker aircraft to Operation Allied Force. This is part of a NATO-wide effort to increase the size of the air force to be used against targets in Kosovo and Yugoslavia more broadly. I have a few more details. There will be so far an additional 2,789 reservists called up to help take over and man additional A-10s, 18 A-10s that will come from 3 Air Guard units. That's the 104th Fighter Wing, Barnesfield, Westfield, Mass., the 110th Fighter Wing, Kellogg Airport, Battle Creek, Michigan, and the 124th Wing at the Boise Air Terminal in Idaho. In addition, there will be included in this number of 2,789 additional reservists will be 524 Red Horse engineers coming out of Kelly Air Force Base in Texas and Great Falls, Montana. The ones from Kelly are reservists, and the ones from Great Falls, Montana are members of the Air National Guard. There are weather forecasters being called up, 60 to 70 weather forecasters, and also some Air Force intelligence people. The Red Horse team will work on refugee camps in Albania, helping to cope with the flow there. It's likely that additional reservists will be called up when we settle on the exact tanker units that will be going over from the Guard or the Reserve. This total of 176 aircraft includes as many as 80 KC-135 tanker equivalents, and we reckon that about 15 of those 80 will come from the Guard or the Reserve. But we don't have those units identified yet, and when we do, we'll give you an updated figure. So far, this means the reserve call-up will be 5,035. In addition to the A-10s, there will be 18 F-16 CJs deploying from the 20th Fighter Wing at Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina. The 4th Fighter Wing in Seymour Johnson Air Force Base is preparing to deploy 36 F-15E Strike Eagles. And Marine Aircraft Group 31 from the Marine Air Corps Station in Beaufort, South Carolina, is preparing to deploy 24 F/A-18 Hornets. In addition, we're going to deploy another logistics support vessel to join 2 that are already in theater to support the surface movement of equipment and supplies between ports in Italy and Albania. So that's the latest on the state of the deployments. We do not we'll give you details when the planes move as to where they're going, but we'll hold off until the planes actually arrive to tell you where they're going to bed down, but the bed downs are worked out. Before I turn this briefing over first to General Wald for his standard rundown, and then to 2 people who are going to talk on JSTARS, and we'll introduce them later. I want to just bring your attention to one chart here, which details some of the facts we've been accumulating over the last month and a half about mass executions and the depopulation of villages in Kosovo. I think you can see from this chart here a long list of villages from which refugees have been pushed out, and also where people have been executed. This is all from information that we've gathered from the State Department and from refugee and other sources over the last couple of months. Let me just point out a couple of things. You can see for instance, in Pesh over here, 50,000 people have been expelled since early March. In Suva Rika, which is right here, we have reports that up to 350 people have been killed and buried in mass graves. We are still getting reports of atrocities occurring in Kosovo. For instance, recently we heard that 40 people were executed. 40 men were taken out of a group of refugees and executed in this building, in this town right here, which is called Glogovac, right there in the middle of Kosovo. That happened on May 1st, according to reports that we're getting from refugees. We're also hearing reports that the VJ is mining a number of these towns after they have emptied them to make it difficult for refugees to return after the NATO campaign leads to the reestablishment of peace and stability in Kosovo. As you know, one of the 5 conditions that NATO is promoting is that the refugees will be able to return to their villages, but the VJ is mining the approach roads back to the villages to make it more difficult for the refugees to repopulate their villages when the opportunity comes for them to return. So this is something that is available to all of you. We've passed out copies, and there's a summary here of exactly what some of the dimensions of this brutal campaign are. 100,000 military-age men are missing. We reckon that, that over 4,600 have been killed in mass executions in over 70 locations. The number killed is far larger than that if you add those who have died from starvation, which seems to be more and more deliberate now, and those who have died in individual murders that have happened along the way. We have confirmed 7, we've confirmed 2 mass grave sites out of the 7 reported. We're obviously investigating the other 5 as best we can, and working in conjunction with the International Criminal Court. We've also, of course, had reports of systematic and mass rapes, including rapes taking place in what have been called rape hotels of the type that were run in Bosnia during the Bosnia War and seem to be going again in places like Peš and elsewhere in Yugoslavia. With that, I'll turn this over now to General Wald.
Could just ask you, just quickly, if you could, if you have any comment or any observation on the reports from the Serbs that NATO bombs hit a hospital today and killed perhaps 11 people?
And a market.
And a market, that's right, nearby.
We are evaluating those reports now, investigating them in Europe at SHAPE, and we don't have any determination yet as to what happened. I hope that we'll have some sort of resolution of that relatively soon, but we don't yet.
Along that same line, the reporters in Belgrade have been taken to Niš now and seen these 2 areas, and they report finding both remnants of U.S. cluster bombs and evidence that the bombs went off. In other words, shrapnel that has penetrated cars and buildings and stuff like that. Do you know at this point whether or not any of the planes that went against targets in Niš at 11:30 local time this morning were carrying cluster bombs?
I'm going to stick to our policy of waiting until we have the full facts and then commenting on those, and that will come out of SHAPE. I'm not going to get into salami slicing this information as it comes out. I've seen those reports. We're investigating the reports. When we complete the investigation, we will, as we have in the past, give a full accounting of what we believe happened. But the time isn't ripe to do that now. The work's still underway at SHAPE and at NATO, and when we have the facts, we'll release them. Our policy is to avoid civilian casualties. We know that we make mistakes from time to time, but Milosevic's policy is to incur civilian casualties, and I think this chart here illustrates how successful he's been. These deaths are not by mistake. If there were civilian casualties caused by the NATO campaign, they are caused by mistake. Yes.
Mr. Bacon. Another missile hit Bulgarian soil today, very close to Sofia capital. Do you know under which circumstances that happened?
I'm afraid I don't know about that. That's something else that we're checking on. Bill.
Ken, just wanted to follow what you had said about more and starvation was more and more deliberate now. I take it that's the MUP and the VJ are preventing people from exiting the country, or is that people that are not allowed to go back in their towns, that are in the hills, or what?
I think there are basically three reasons. One is that they are not always allowed to leave the country rapidly. Sometimes they're held in areas for periods of time. Two, there is a shortage of food generally, and that shortage will get worse because now is the time when people should be plowing fields and planting crops, and they're not doing that. They can't because they're on the move, because they're being terrorized. So when there's a shortage of food, the VJ and the MUP, that is the Yugoslav Army and the Special Police, take the food for themselves and deprive the Kosovo Albanians from food that should be rightfully theirs. And then the third is that that because they're on the move, it's just difficult for them to get food. So those are the three reasons.
So there is proof of actual starvation by...
Well, what we
by the
found is initially, in the early stages, the refugees coming out were in pretty good health and well fed. As the depopulation campaign has continued, we are finding that, and as the refugees spend more and more times in the hills, away from their homes, many of which are destroyed, thousands of homes have been destroyed and burned, we are finding that those coming out are weaker and weaker and less well fed. And that's actually not new. That's been happening over the last couple of weeks. Steve.
Ken, could you tell us the location of the 2 mass graves that have been confirmed and the location of the other 5 reported graves?
I don't have them here now, but I'll get them for you.
Ken?
Yes.
Greens this morning sidestepped the question, so let me just ask you about whether, in retrospect, it was a mistake to allow those U.S. soldiers to separate from their fellow soldiers during the patrols up by the border. I mean, looking back on that in retrospect, was the threat level underestimated clearly?
Jamie, General Grange has spent more time evaluating what happened along the Macedonian-Serb border with these 3 soldiers than anybody else, and I would be an idiot to walk where he's not walking. He, I thought, gave a very forthright and detailed interview today. I felt that he laid out the facts extremely well. I felt that he answered your questions extremely well, and I have nothing to add to what he said.
And back to the chart, how prevalent does it appear the use of refugees as human shields? And if it is fairly prevalent, has there been any kind of an increase as we go after the deployed forces more and more?
No, what we get are reports from refugees and from others that Kosovo Albanians are being used as human shields. There was a recent report, for instance, that there were more than 1,000 Kosovo Albanians kept at the Pristina airport one night as human shields. These are anecdotal reports that we get from refugees as they come across the border. We know that it has happened from time to time. It's hard to know how widespread this practice is, but it's certainly happening enough to be very disturbing. Yes?
What's the latest on the 2 Serb POWs?
They remain in custody. They have been seen by the International Committee for the Red Cross, and they will continue to be seen by them. That's the status.
Secretary Collins still...
Have either of them expressed their reluctance to return to Serbia?
I
can't comment on what they've said or haven't said. Yes, Pat?
I see on your chart there you have mass graves, 7 reported, 2 confirmed. Admiral Wilson, last week we asked him specifically about any proof of mass graves. He said he didn't have it. Is this something new, or how did you?
Well, this
confirm?
is information that the State Department has put together primarily, and this is information that they have confirmed in two ways: one, pictorial, and two, refugee reports. And as I said earlier to the question from the New York Times, we will provide information on where we believe these are. I see that the State Department here lists actually the two confirmed sites are in Izbica, I-Z-B-I-C-A, and Pusto Selo, P-U-S-T-O is the first word, and the second is S-E-L-O. The other reported sites that have not been confirmed are at Drenica, D-R-E-N-I-C-A, Maleševo, which is on there, M-A-L-E-S-E-V-O, Dakovica, which is over here, and also in Rezalia, R-E-Z-A-L-I-A, and also in the Pagarusa Valley. Those are the five other sites that have been reported but not confirmed. Yes?
If there are over 100,000 military-age men missing and only 46 reported killed, what do you think's happened to the rest of the men?
4,600 reported killed. This could well be a conservative estimate of the number who've been killed in mass executions. Some may have been used to dig graves. Some may have been used to force to support the Serb military in various ways. We have reports that some have been used as human shields. Some may have died in the hills or working. We just don't know. And that's one of the mysteries that won't be resolved until this conflict is over. Yes.
Does that 100,000 include some who presumably have joined the KLA?
It presumably includes people the Serbs fear could join the KLA. They're people of military age, of draft age, they're men from their mid-teens to their late 30s or 40s. And we assume that they have been taken away so they would not become part of a fighting force. The fact that they're missing means that we can't interview them and find out exactly what's happened to them. Chris?
I'd like to follow up on yesterday's situation regarding the Army's alleged public affairs guidance in Tirana. A pool has been created there. It's my understanding that the Army guidance to the people on the ground there is that ABC will continue to operate unilaterally and exclusively inside the gates, outside of the umbrella of the pool.
That's not my understanding.
That's what I was told by Colonel Gaylord an hour ago.
Well, I've been discussing this. I have not had a chance to sit down and be briefed on it fully, but my understanding is that it will be a full participant in a normal pool arrangement, but I will look into this after the briefing.
All of this material will be pool material.
I'd be glad to sit down and talk with you about this. Obviously, I don't have the facts, so it's worthless for me to talk about it now. Yes, Steve.
Ken, do you have any reports that NATO strikes have in fact killed any human shields?
Sorry?
NATO strikes have killed human shields?
I don't have reports of that, no. Yes?
Given the magnitude of the atrocities that you've got laid out up there and the fact that there have been statements both here and NATO that President Milosevic is responsible for everything that's been happening to his people, are there any thoughts or plans of trying to take him into custody when this is all over so that he could face trial?
Well, that's something that the International Criminal Tribunal for Yugoslavia will have to decide. We make evidence available to them as we run across it. Not just the United States, but many other NATO countries are working with them. They have people in the refugee camps in Albania and Macedonia interviewing on a regular basis, and they are assembling as much evidence as they can. They will have to look at all of this and decide whether it meets the standards of war crimes or not. And that's their determination. If it does, they would issue an indictment.
And then practically speaking, how would you go about getting him into custody?
Well, I think we'll have to wait and see if there's an indictment before we get to that. That's a step beyond where we are now. Yes.
Secretary Cohen's still reviewing whether or not the 2 Yugoslav prisoners might be turned over. Where does that stand?
He is. He hasn't completed that review.
And when he does, it will go to Clinton, is that right?
Yeah, the president has asked him to make a recommendation, and that's what he'll do.
Is there a timetable for that?
There is not.
It was reported in Washington Post that you are sending 2,000 Marines to Montenegro via Italy. Do you have anything on that?
Well, we're not sending Marines to Montenegro, to the best of my knowledge. That's, I don't know about that, no.
Has the President been asked yet to review or approve combat use of the Apaches?
In keeping with my policy over the last week, we're not going to comment on any part of the approval process. The Apaches will be used at the time of our choosing, and we're not going to forecast it ahead of time by talking about political approval.
They returned to exercising last night?
Yes, they did. They exercised on May 6th.
On 176 planes, when you add in the 30 tankers previously called, it rounds out at about 200. Do you expect that that'll be it out of the 300 that this SACIO requested, or more be called?
No, I think it's quite likely that more will be called up over time.
Jamie Shea said this morning that the concept of operations for the visit and search has now been approved. Do you have any idea how soon that program will begin? And also, can you tell us, since we're all given to understand that NATO will not fire on any vessel that tries to go on by the blockade, if a vessel is searched and found to have oil, will NATO be authorized to use force to turn it away?
I don't know the answer to those questions, so I better find out and get back to you. Yes?
This morning, Jamie Shea also confirmed that Serb or Yugoslav ships were effectively blockading the port in Bar, Montenegro. And Clark said a while back that, if Yugoslav ships come out of port at all, they're going to have hell to pay, or whatever words he used. Have we responded in any way on the seas to their blockade?
Not yet.
Are we gonna?
Well, stay tuned. Okay, General Wald.
Same kind of weather I briefed yesterday. It's been bad all last 24 hours. It's pretty poor right now. They still did fly quite a few missions yesterday, about 500 or so. And it's starting to break up now. And then, as I said yesterday, in the next week or so, they're predicting a high-pressure front. Should be good for the next several days after this. And it's about as predicted, actually, about a third of the time. So we'll get, hopefully, all the bad weather up front in May. As I mentioned earlier, about 16 fixed targets and some fielded forces last night. A few of the targets up in the north were mobility-type targets, which are bridge-type targets, and then some SAM-type support and radio relays, and a command and control site as well.
How many fielded forces targets?
I think there's about 9 total attacks yesterday. Just thought I'd go over the aircraft. Charlie asked a question a minute ago. This is where we're at right now for U.S. aircraft, of which that includes right around 150 tankers. The ones in Hungary are flying, I believe, today. There's the aircraft carrier, some submarines, a submarine, and some other amphibious ships and minesweepers in the area. That's the U.S. contribution.
Sir, can I clarify, does that include the ones announced yesterday or not?
No, it does not.
The support, is that CJs or an EA-6?
No, support would be rivet joint, tankers, things like that. For the Allies, they have about 277. You can see the same breakout there. Those are the nations that are actually participating in the air, and some of the other contributions, they have 2 aircraft carriers, one from the UK and one from the French. Sustained hope, there's only about 3,700 refugees yesterday. Reports are the Macedonian border was closed off by the Serbs last night. They keep opening and closing. For what reason, we're not sure. Camp Hope, once again, still by 13 May. That's moving along. I'll show you a couple slides of that in a minute. The second camp site selection is ongoing. They're looking, planning for a third camp. And then the Fort Dix flights still start arriving. Just a recap on the international side, totals for food from the international community is about 430,000 per month, so food is still required. That's coming in. There's been about almost 30,000 refugees moved to other countries. The international community has agreed, pledged for about 150,000, and there's aid coming in from at least 57 countries now. The U.S. is in the works now for 60,000 person capacity for the 3 camps in Macedonia. We've moved over 1 million humanitarian daily rations. We have another 1 million in reserve. U.S. has provided over 7,600 tents. I think there's somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 30,000 that have been moved forward. And then, once again, refugees moving to the U.S. should be in the category of 20,000. So on the second front, which is humanitarian front, we're continuing to do as many positive things as we can there, and it's working well. UNHCR is in the lead. International contributions, just a rehash. We haven't talked about this for a while, but the food continues to come in. But once again, the international UNHCR and the NGOs still need more food and shelter. Vehicles continue, and there's about actually 21 countries now have accepted refugees into their country, into homes. There are hundreds of thousands in Albania and Macedonia that are actually with families in those two countries as well. I think it's around 200,000. We talked about yesterday the additional person that arrived yesterday, the newest American from Albania, as well as 416 today, and then that'll go on until the 20,000 number is reached. So a picture of Camp Hope where it's in a field near Fear. You can see that the tents are spaced out, and fortunately it's in pretty decent terrain there. Just another view, they're putting up water towers so they'll have adequate water for both sanitation and drinking, cooking. And there's just another site there, just shows the magnitude of the logistics that's going on. That'll be just one. This is actually the first 2,500 person tent city there, and then that'll continue on till through the end of May. They'll finish that one, then they'll start on the second camp, and then the third after that. Just some imagery for over the last few days. This is Belgrade Bačenica SAM support facility in Serbia itself. You can see that this is a inactive SA-3 site on the field itself. These buildings here for both SAM support, sustainability, and repair are all damaged and destroyed. This is a blow up of this particular area here. You can see it's destroyed. So as they fire their SAMs, they deplete them. As we take out their radars, we take away their ability to fire SAMs. They still have that ability, and then we take their sustainability and support down. So as they move the SAMs around, which they're doing a lot, they have we're taking their ability to repair those down. So it all adds up. They did fire several SAMs last night and quite a few man pads. This is just a picture of a fielded SA-3 low blow. This is the radar here. We destroyed the radar. These two launchers are still there, but the idea is you get the radar down. These launchers then go into the optical mode and aren't quite as effective. Another SAM site, I showed a film of this the other day. This is an SA-6 that had a radar van with it and then a straight flush radar. Those are both gone, so we continue to take down his ability to defend himself. This is an ammo storage area in Perichin, and you can see that almost all these buildings in here are destroyed. Many of them had ammo in them, so his sustainment is going down as well. Cumulatively, then, his sustainment and ability to perform with the IADS, command and control, all continue to degrade his capability in the field. I'm going to show you, I just want to show you this now because I want to show a film in a minute. I know Mr. McWethy was over in Aviano not too long ago and saw some of this, and I'll show you how it works. This is just another aid to help us to find the target. We use it sometimes, not all the time. I personally used it. Some people may not use it as much, but I've seen it used quite a bit. And it's a rehearsal machine, so you can, on a fixed target, knowing where you're going to go, you can actually practice with this, and it gives you an idea of what the terrain and the area is going to look at, like not only through your cockpit imagery, or video, I should say, but through the heads-up display in the cockpit. And there's various sources of information that are put into this machine. It's database. It's a digital database that looks exactly like the terrain in Kosovo or the Fry. And you would practice on this as many times as you had time for, depending on what the time of your preparation would be. If you have more time, the more you'd use it. And then what I'll show here is I'll show you an actual video of this practice and then show you an actual target that was hit using the same type of scene and then the actual bomb on it. And the point here is, give time permitting, you'll do everything you can to make sure you have the right target for two reasons. Not just for collateral damage, although it's paramount, but you don't want to go back and hit it the second time.
Hooked into a simulator?
It's a computerized terrain database that's on what looks like a fairly good-sized computer screen, but you have a stick to fly with it, and it has a little up and down throttle on it.
Please hold your questions until after the video.
This is a Rakovina Highway Bridge, which is just north of the Kosovo border. One of the bridges going into Serbia itself. This is actually an image from above. One of the things you'll look at here is this is kind of an identifying feature of this bridge. It's got a unique kind of a off ramp here. You'll see next the actual power scene. It's got a heads-up display on the power scene itself. And as you go down, you can see the bridge here and get closer. You can simulate the distance you're away, the altitude you're away. You can zoom in, zoom out. And it gives a chance to see what it might look like through your infrared targeting pod or possibly through your heads-up display. You can see here, you can see the unique kind of loop we were talking about before. It looks almost exactly like the overhead imagery. You can practice this from all headings, all angles, all altitudes, depending on what your altitude and heading and angle that may be for that delivery. This is an actual F-15E dropping a bomb on that particular bridge. You can see the unique loop in the bottom here. Takes out the span. Once again, when available for those particular fixed targets, we'll use that type of thing just to make sure, like I said, for two things, that we don't have to go back and hit it a second time. Here's a post-strike image of it. You can see that it was taken down. And with fixed targets, of course, it's much easier to do that. Next, we'll have some HUD camera film from some of the sorties over the last couple days. First is a highway bridge again in central Kosovo. It's F-16s. This is about 5-6 days ago. Similar bridge to the one we just hit, but not the same one. Continue to take down his ability to resupply and travel over the area back in and to and from Kosovo. That bridge was functionally taken down, so it probably wouldn't hold a vehicle, but you could probably walk across it. Another highway bridge, central Kosovo. Same bridge, different strike. And the car driving down there is, fortunately, he took that particular span of the bridge. You can see the first strike. Second one probably took it down to the point where the most you could do on that was walk across it. F-15E laser-guided bomb on a MUP police station in Kosovo a couple days ago. It's paramilitary police or their MUP police, one or the other. And you can see if this had been with power scene, it would help the pilot identify that particular building in a lot better way. So we'll continue to hit his sustainment in the field and his fielded forces. Another F-15E, another MUP police station. Some of these targets are very difficult to find the exact one. You can see this is in the middle of other buildings. And that's a tough target for the potential for collateral damage, and if you can't make sure, you won't hit that particular target. Ponikve Airfield, southwest Serbia. This is a Spanish EF-18 dropping a laser-guided bomb about 3 days ago. Once again, underneath, this is his laser spot tracker here. A couple bombs on the building itself. It's F-14 off the Theodore Roosevelt in a fielded forces, a revetment. He's FACing for an F-18. So he's the forward air controller. He's actually just watching this. He's already told the F-18 where the target is, and you can see it's a direct, and he was buddy lasing there where he's actually lasing for that F-18 himself. So the F-18 would drop the bomb and use the F-14's laser. Military vehicles in the Kosovo engagement zone, F-18 again from the TR. Pretty good size secondary off that one. Night mission. Surface-to-air missile storage, Kosovo engagement zone. I showed you a picture of one of those areas a moment ago in imagery. This is a different one. He's working in the clouds. You can see he's fighting through the clouds with this thing, and he finally gets the laser on at the last second, and it hits the building, fortunately. You can see there's some secondary burning from that. Some more fielded forces in a revetment in the Kosovo engagement zone. This is an F-14. And these are tough targets to find with this type of terrain and the foliage, etc. That was definitely a shack there, and it had some secondaries. A tank in the Kosovo engagement zone 2 days ago, F-14. You can see the tank under the cursor. And that also had a secondary, so there was probably fuel in that. Another tank, F-14, Kosovo engagement zone. This all adds up to the point where he's starting to have his forces degraded significantly. Same area, you can see where the first bomb hit. Another good-sized explosion. That's all the imagery for today. If you have any questions, I'll take them now.
General, what targets, if any, were hit, or did you try to hit in or near the city of Niš in the past 24 hours, overnight or this morning?
Once again, I understand the airfield at Niš was attacked. I don't know of any other targets around that area whatsoever.
Just the airfield.
That's right.
Has Belgrade been hit in the last?
I beg your pardon?
Was attacked with a B-52?
It was attacked by several different types of aircraft, including,
One of those was a B-52.
I understand there were B-52s.
Has Belgrade been hit in the last few days, and if not, why not?
Belgrade continues to be struck at different times. It's on the list every night from what I understand, so I don't know any reason why it wouldn't be.
A week ago, you showed us the first, the bunker buster bomb was going into the tunnel. First of all, have you had any assessment of what was inside that tunnel and what the bomb did to it? And second of all, have those types of weapons been used on other command and control facilities?
The weapon has been used on two things that I know of. One is the Pristina bunker I showed one time before. We had the tunnels at either end, and it was in a large tunnel type mounted area. I know they hit it, but it's hard to tell what happened inside, but I suspect anything inside is destroyed. And it's been used on a bunker type radio relay site that I showed some pictures of before in a mountainous area that was kind of dug in quite a bit.
Was that a place called Mount Avila, is that correct?
It may have been, I can't remember. One more question? Anybody's got one? Okay, thank you very much.
Tomorrow, General Wald and I will brief at 11 o'clock. Before I introduce the JSTARS team, I just want to announce that Brian Sheridan was sworn in today as Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations and Low-Intensity Conflict. Many of you know him from his several years in the Pentagon. Finally, I'm very pleased to announce that we have a skilled team of briefers here on the JSTARS, which is a topic of some concern to many of you. For the Air Force, Colonel Joe Stein, who is in his final days of being a colonel because he's going to be promoted to brigadier general. He's from Robbins Air Force Base in Georgia. He's the commander of the 93rd Air Control Wing at Robbins, the parent wing for the Joint Stars. Colonel Young from the Army is the deputy commander of the wing responsible for all Army personnel assigned to the JSTARS program. They will describe to you how this joint surveillance target attack radar system works and how it helps with the targeting in Kosovo. Gentlemen.
Thanks, sir. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am Joe Stein, commander of the 93rd Air Control Wing from Robbins Air Force Base and home of our nation's Joint Stars Force. And as mentioned before, Colonel Randy Young is our Army Group Commander. You know, one point you should start with at the very beginning here is that the Army, this is a joint operation, that the Army is integrated with us day in and day out. They're integrated into our squadrons, our wing structure. They fly with us. In fact, the Deputy Mission Crew Commander on board is an Army officer for each sortie, along with 2 Army technicians. What I'd like to do for you today is talk through a little bit of the basic capabilities of our Joint Stars aircraft and system, then perhaps a little update on the way our forces are performing in theater right now today. The aircraft, as shown here, basically is a converted Boeing 707 aircraft. It's got structural enhancements, new skins, et cetera, as it goes through a remanufacture process at Lake Charles, Louisiana. Prime mission equipment, great radar system put on the back end here. Basically, we are a theater battle management asset. I'll explain the capabilities. We deliver two products here to you. One is a moving target indicator. You'll see a picture on this slide here from past operation in Bosnia. The dots along the screen there show moving targets throughout the area of operation. You can see through this thing, there's quite a lot of movement in that area. You can tell very readily the traffic zones, the areas, lines of communication, and also, importantly, where lines of communications are not being used. There's a second product we have, which is called a synthetic aperture radar, or SAR for short. It's somewhat like a black and white photo from the ground, kind of like a guide's eye view. Here's one from the Sava River Bridge, or Sava River over in Bosnia as well, and you can see a pontoon bridge that was put in by our forces here, and you can see also that we've got the ability to overlay our moving target indicator on top of the SAR to give a view. Our basic mission is battle management. It's one where we take a wide area surveillance across the entire battlefield and then can zoom into areas of interest. Now, the information is great for our battlefield commanders. It's of no value if we keep it to ourselves, though. And two distinct functions that we have is to pass that information on to both ground commanders and also those in key operations center. The next slide will show you a picture of a common ground station. This is a vehicle that goes along with maneuver commanders in the field where they can get essentially an instantaneous view of what we're seeing on the aircraft. So they've got that look at the forces that are over the next hill and what's happening to them in the battlefield ahead of them. In addition to this, we have several joint service workstations which are deployed at locations like the Combined Air Operations Center in Vicenza, the Joint Analysis Center in RAF Molesworth, and different field strike units so that they can get this real-time information to guide their operations throughout. Next slide. The big thing, too, is beyond those particular points that we send the data down for workstations, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that we operate basically as a big team. We interact with other systems that are in the air, many of them displayed right here. We fuse our data with other sources to provide the real picture we need for the battlefield. We are also responsible for an entire range of operations across the entire battle space, things ranging from basic surveillance all the way to attack support, basically real-time prosecution of moving targets on the battlefield. One thing I'd like to mention is I just returned from a trip to the theater where I had the opportunity to fly with our folks out there, also visit the CAOC, the Combined Air Operations Center in Vicenza, Joint Analysis Center, United States Air Forces Europe headquarters, and I've got to tell you, I couldn't be proud of our men and women out there right now today. The pace is high, the operation is going tremendously, morale is very high, they know they are making a difference in this operation, and again, as I traveled across the theater talking to each one of the key commanders, the words I got is the product was invaluable to their service. The bottom line I'd like to leave with you here today is that Joint STARS is on station and engaged in Kosovo. It is making a big difference. And basically what we provide is information on moving targets through all hours of the day in any weather. And the bottom line message here is Mr. Milosevic should know that his forces cannot move with impunity at any time. With that, we're prepared to answer any questions you might have. Sure.
What happens at the Joint Analysis Center you mentioned?
What will happen there is we, in addition to other sources, will provide information, surveillance information of the battlefield, potential targets for the future, to them for analysis to find out what they might fit into future strikes.
That's like a clearinghouse for all sorts of imagery and different sorts of...
There are all sources of information that come in that they combine, that fuse data from different weapon systems, and that's provided to essentially our forces, our allied forces as well.
And they provide that back out in real time, or they're just responsible for like cataloging it and stuff like that?
They've got a couple of different functions with that. The real-time function would be more properly handled by our Combined Air Operations Center down in Vicenza, where our information is piped down to as well. Yes, sir.
You said you were just over in theater. I'm curious, with these new basings and new air routes opening up, is there a sense that the air congestion will ease up and some of the threat to the aircraft from Allied aircraft is going to subside?
I guess what I'd say is anytime you're in a battle space, you've got a lot of aircraft in the sky. I feel very confident. As I said, I flew into the Kosovo region myself. I felt very secure. I felt the operation was in good hands, and forces were well integrated.
So
Yes,
no change then with the, from how it was 2-3 weeks ago?
None that I'm aware of. Again, I have not been there yesterday, obviously. Yes, sir.
Are you getting relayed imagery from U-2s and these other aircraft? And specifically, are you able to track armored units to hiding places, keep track, and then target them the following day?
We do have data links with different sources that come on board. For instance, we get an air picture from the AWACS that comes on board. We get some other type of voice passes and information that does come. Different areas of fidelity for different systems. Yes, we can track vehicles. We can track convoys or armored convoys. We could pass that information on again to either the Joint Analysis Center or the KOC, so they could use that in future strikes.
You've been doing that then. I mean, we've been fairly successful last week or so in picking off armor under trees, stuff like that.
Well, I think, again, there are a wide range of members providing that information. We're doing that on a day-to-day basis. We're doing it at all weather times. We've got great success in terms of helping that picture.
How far do you stand off? Generally.
I'd hesitate to give you our exact orbit location. What I'd say is that obviously we have a great range on our radar. We can look, the unclassified version is beyond 250 kilometers. So we've got quite a capability to look into the battle space itself.
I'm sorry if I missed this, but how many of the aircraft are operating now in Kosovo Theater?
We have 2 aircraft deployed in theater today.
So that's the same number that you used during the Bosnia conflict? Is that right?
That's the same then. I think the pace is a little quicker than it was back then. Again, tremendous aircraft reliability rate today. The folks on the ramp are about 98% plus in terms of launch reliability rate. They're over 96% in terms of mission effectiveness. The pace is very high. We've got sorties that operate in excess of 16 hours duration, providing great coverage to the field today.
What constitutes mission effectiveness? You said 96%.
And that's being able to be on station and service your targets and provide the information we need to the folks down either on the ground or in the Air Operations Center. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk a little bit about the status of your fleet? My understanding is you're not able to train any more Joint Star pilots because your commitment is so, you're at surge capability right now?
Well, I'd say we're certainly operating at a peak level right now in theater. In fact, the folks are flying long enough that the normal flight duty period for a 30-day period is about 125 hours maximum. That's been increased to 165 hours for our folks. In spite of that, they're doing a fantastic job. Morale is high because they know they're making that difference. Now, that pace on a maturing system is obviously going to have an impact. We are still working around that training issue at home. We are eking that stuff through, and actually we are increasing the pace within the next week here.
Can you do any infrared sensing from JSTARS?
We don't have infrared capability on board the jet, but we do have a tremendous radar capability. Yes, sir.
Colonel, just wondered again what's changed since the last deployment in terms of increasing the aircraft's effectiveness, both in things like foliage penetration, IDing those assets that have taken advantage of terrain masking, things like that. Has there been any improvements that you can talk about?
Well, I'd say obviously experience, the reliability is definitely rivals anything in the fleet we have today, the operation that's going on. In terms of the battle space and in terms of Kosovo area of operations, I'd say we have good visibility into that operation. Obviously, terrain will have some impact. However, we're able to take care of that in terms of changing orbits. And we've got other assets in our team that can provide coverage as well. So this is a true team operation to get that. Yes, sir.
You've got 2 aircraft in theater?
Yes, sir.
How many people?
We've got approximately 200 people in theater right now.
That's a whole number of crews.
Crews, maintainers, support personnel. Yes, sir.
What are you being told on deliveries of aircraft 5 and 6? How late are they going to be?
In fact, I think the good news story is they're not going to be late. I think they're going to be early. Aircraft 5 is scheduled for delivery at the end of October '99. Aircraft 6 about 2 months past that. Words I'm hearing right now is the aircraft are tracking ahead of schedule. All good news reports. In fact, within about the next 12 months or so, I think we can expect to have about 4 aircraft more.
And following up on the training issue, do you expect to have enough crews to service those 2 aircraft when they come back if this conflict continues?
We're continuing to build crews. Again, that's going to depend on what the operational tasking is in the future here. Yes, sir.
Can you scan from Kosovo to Serbia from your holding pattern?
I think, again, ranges where we actually can scan are going to be orbit dependent. I'd rather not discuss the exact locations. However, we do have a wide range.
Doesn't it?
Yes, sir, it sure does. Has a tremendous reach.
You focused your operations on the southern part of the country. Now Hungary is opening up its airspace. Do you expect on occasion also to set up orbits there?
I think that's going to be a question for the operational commander. It'll be dependent upon what phase the operation is in at that time. Yes, ma'am.
Following up on this question on 5 and 6, have there been any changes so that it meets operational suitability? You guys were, Philip Coyle said, the operational suitability of Joint STARS still isn't where DoD wants it. Have some changes been made to 5 and 6 to meet that?
Well, I'll tell you what, there's been a lot that has gone on, a lot of work with in the Joint Program Office within Air Combat Command and the wing in getting the aircraft out and improving it. It's just like anything else. We'll continue to improve with time and with experience. I will tell you I had the opportunity to be in on a briefing to Mr. Coyle not too long ago. A lot of information is based on modeling. We went out and I passed on to him that experience that the wing had showed in a few recent surge operations that we had put together, that the reliability of the aircraft was in fact tremendous. It was much higher than what the models were showing. And I'd let the statistics speak for themselves in theater today. It is working just fabulous. The crews, the maintainers, the support personnel, they're doing everything they absolutely need to do get the operation and keep it flying for the theater commander. Yes, sir.
The other 2 aircraft at Robbins?
Excuse me, sir?
The other 2 aircraft?
Yes, sir, right now.
So any chance of moving them over?
They're at Robbins. We maintain the capability to respond to any tasking. They're obviously going to be used partially for schoolhouse training. We could, if called, the theater commander and the National Command Authority decides to send another one into a theater in Europe, we could do that. And oh, by the way, we could end up responding to other places around the world. I would highlight for you when this contingency kicked off, we had an aircraft and a host of people that were deployed out to the Pacific. We maintained that operation with 100% launch reliability. At the very same time, we executed the deployment over to Kosovo and took care of that operation too.
Are you flying 24 hours a day or day, night?
I'd say we have the capability to fly whenever the theater commander needs us, whether it's day, whether it's night, whether it's good weather or bad. We'll provide what he needs and he'll provide the tasking. Yes, sir.
Are the 2 that are in use right now the same 2 that were deployed at the beginning of Allied Force? And if so, have you been rotating the crews at all?
We've had some limited crew rotation. We've also rotated one of the aircraft back, and that was to do minor maintenance, just continuing preventative maintenance, and also an upgrade to some of the equipment on board. Yes, sir.
Question for Colonel Young on the taskings that come from the ground up to the air. Joint STARS initially was used mainly to support the air campaign, and now the Army came in and it was shifting to the support of the ground. There's some concern that suddenly there'll be all these requests coming in. Jack Molesworth, the KOC with its air requests, now the Army's coming in. How do you work out what's the process now to get the Army's intelligence needs filled?
Right, there's a prioritization process that's in place in theater, and that prioritization process determines the priority of support. I would imagine that the theater commander would be involved in establishing that priority, and there may be certain phases of the operation that you would support one element slightly more than another. But the jet itself has tremendous capability to service multiple stations, and right now we're not even coming close to servicing the normal number of stations. In a normal environment supporting the Corps, we would expect to have 25 ground stations. In this particular scenario, we got some GSMs located with Task Force Hawk, as well as we have about 7 joint service workstations spread throughout the theater. So we really haven't tapped the full capability of the aircraft to date.
But would Task Force Hawk basically have to send its intelligence requests to the KOC and they get racked and stacked there with the other requests?
Well, there's 2 methods of doing it. One is pre-plan. A pre-plan request would go through the normal process of going to the KOC and then showing up on the air tasking order for the air crew to execute. The dynamic request can come direct from via data link from the ground station located with Task Force Hawk.
Thank you very
much. Thank you.
Yeah.